All right. Well, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Schuman. I am the Global Education Coordinator Manager. I know my title for the College of Food, Agricultural, and Environmental Sciences. And I'm joined here today by one of our lovely RDs for the program, Dr. Castavelli. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, hello everybody. Thank you for being today with us. Well, I am Dr. Silvia del Amo Castellví. I'm actually from Catalonia, Spain, and I am currently working at the Food Science and Technology Department, one of the departments that's actually organizing this study abroad program with Animal Science Department. And well, I will share with you my experience in my own country. Welcome.
Great. And then, unfortunately, Dr. Bohr is out of the office today, so I don't think he'll be joining us. He was going to try if he could, but we'll kind of go through. He's the other faculty that's going to be teaching the course and leading the program. He is from our Animal Sciences department. And if he jumps on at some point, we'll have him introduce himself, but we'll keep moving along. So what we're going to kind of go over today, we'll talk a little bit about just kind of why study abroad in general, some of the overall benefits. We'll talk a little bit about the courses associated with the program, go through what the in-country portion of the trip is going to look like and kind of what you can expect to do on the ground in Spain. We'll talk a little bit about the costs. We'll talk about some scholarship opportunities, how to apply, and then next steps. We'll have time for questions as well as we go kind of at the end, but feel free if you have questions as we're going through, you can always put them in the chat as well. So just kind of some basic like why study abroad, I think one of the big things that we've seen recently in some studies that have come out is there are skills that students get through studying abroad that employers are really looking to see. And so a lot of that is kind of those first two icons there, that self-reliance, those problem solving skills, competence, and then those global competencies, intercultural communication, intercultural competencies. It's also a great way to make connections, both, with your peers, kind of making friends. You're going to be with this group for a little under 2 weeks, but you guys are really going to be a cohort for those 2 weeks, kind of traveling together, living together, sharing some meals. So you really get to know the peers that you're traveling with. And I think we see a lot of really good friendships develop out of study abroad programs. It's also a great opportunity to get to know the faculty that are traveling with you, because that same thing, they're going to be with you for those 2 weeks, traveling together, having some meals with you. So when you need references or letter of recommendations down the line, they will get to know you very well through this experience, and hopefully it will be a good experience, and then they'll be more than happy to help support you in that way. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these next two slides, but I wanted to have them in here. I will send the slides out following the session, hopefully tomorrow. I'm actually headed up to our ATI campus in Worcester, so it might be Friday morning, just depending on what kind of time I have tomorrow. But these are just some of those other skills and kind of a description of those skills. So as you're thinking about, what you might want to get out of this program, and how that might impact kind of your future, whether that's your career search or maybe going to grad school, just some ideas of what those skills that you might develop could be. And then kind of the same thing, what are those career readiness and career relevant aspects that we see students kind of taking away from study abroad. And all of this is going to be, a little bit what you put into it and what you make of the situation, but we will talk more about that kind of throughout the pre-departure process as we're getting students ready to participate, how to make the most of these things when thinking about it in relation to your career and what you're planning to do in the future. So moving on to kind of the courses, there are two classes that are associated with this trip. There is kind of a pre-departure course that will take place in spring 2026. It'll be in the second session of the spring semester. So that's that March 4th through April 21st timeframe. And it's scheduled to meet Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1:50 to 2:45 p.m. So that's this Animal Science 2400.08. It's just a 1 credit hour class. But if you are planning to apply and participate in the program, right now, as you're working on your spring schedules, you're not going to be able to enroll in the class. We'll work with you to enroll kind of after we've passed the application deadline. But I would just say kind of plan your schedule to try and hold that Tuesday, Thursday time slot open. and kind of make sure you have space to add that 1 credit hour, and then we can um, get that added to your schedule in early winter. The big class is the actual class that's associated with the travel portion of the program. So during the summer, so it's a 3 credit hour class. Animal Science is 3797.08. And it will only be meeting during the travel dates, so which are May 1st to May 1st. My goodness, May 11th to May 22nd. 2026. So that's when the program will actually traveling to Spain. You'll leave the US on the 11th, and then you'll land in Spain really on the 12th, but you'll come back on May 22nd. That's when you'll go back to the US. So that is the only time that that class will be meeting. So there's not, meeting dates or things that you'll have to be worried about being in Columbus or being online for outside of those travel dates for the course. And then this is just kind of what those learning objectives are. So this is usually the part that Dr. Bohr talks about, but I'll try and do my best and obviously chime in if you want, Dr. Castelli. They'll be close. So we're looking at really, the farm systems and kind of what can we learn about that from a comparative standpoint of how we approach kind of the production systems and the care of the animals that lead to the meat and cheese products here in the US, and what does that look like in another country. And so in this case, we're looking at Spain as that comparison. So what is the processing of those products look like, and what are the different cultural pieces to the production of cured meat and cheese? And then when we actually are in country, we're seeing that hands-on, right? And so we're going to talk here in a minute about what the in-country experience looks like, but we're visiting farms, looking at how they're taking care of those animals, visiting the processing facilities, experiencing those cultural differences.
Perfect, Elizabeth.
Yeah, okay. So what we're actually going to do in country. So the way the program is set up, everyone will fly into Seville. And then throughout the course of the time that we're there, you'll make your way up to kind of that northeastern part of the country, ending in Barcelona, and then everyone will fly home through Barcelona. So we start in Seville. I don't know if you want to kind of take over a little bit here.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Elizabeth. Well, we are going to start in Seville. And as Elizabeth was saying, we are just targeting, because the way that we produce cured meat products and cheeses in Spain is very peculiar, okay? And this course is organized between animal science and food science, and we want to explain you the secrets on how we produce these two different types of food products. And we are going to start with Seville because actually in this southern part of Spain, they have a lot of Iberian farms. It's like they have especially a specialist type of a variety of pigs that actually we use just to produce these meat cured products. And those places, they are very interesting because you are going to see the species of pigs that they use, okay, the Iberian one, and you are going to see part of the production process of these dry cured meat products, okay. We are going to target 3 different locations. And also we are going to have a welcome dinner just to try to start to know each other. And you have different locations in Seville that you can just visit by yourself because you are going to have a little bit of extra time. And these are a little bit of suggestions. Seville actually is a very nice city. It has a very interesting weather. You're going to start enjoying because it's going to be May and the temperatures are going to be high, you will see. But you can see some of the places, especially the Cathedral of Seville. It's very, very nice one, okay? And if we move, and this is, we are going to be 3 days there. Then we are going to take one of the fast train that we have, and we are going just to head to Tarragona. It's going to be very interesting because those trains are very nice. They have, you can get some food there and enjoy, relaxing, and the views are very interesting. And we are going to head to Tarragona, and there we are planning to stay 3 days. And Tarragona, actually, it's a nice city because it was the capital of the Roman Empire of the Mediterranean region, and it was called Catarraco, and actually has a lot of Roman remains. That's why we are just planning also to have like a Romana tour for you because yeah, we have an amphitheater, a theater. Actually, I was born on that city and I was raised there. I know the city well, and it's besides the Mediterranean Sea that you're also going to be able to enjoy the food, especially the seafood, that it has a particular taste. Okay, and here we are just going to target different food companies. We are going to go to a winery that actually they focus on the production of wine in an ecological way. You are not going to be able to drink wine, but they are going to offer us like a tasting session of local products, mostly focus on cheeses, like different type of breads, olive oils, and dry meat products that I think you are going to enjoy. Then we are planning to go Europastry. Europastry is one of the biggest companies around the world that they produce the frozen dough for different type of breads. And it's very interesting to go there because it's located quite close to Tarragona, and you can see the different varieties of bread that actually we consume mostly in Europe. They're a little bit different than the ones that you are consuming here in the United States. And then we are going to focus Bonaria. Then Bonaria is actually interesting because they don't have intermediates. There's a company that owns the farms and knows everything, and they produce their own food products, and they have their own stores that they are selling the meat products, well, everything. And it's a very interesting system. The facilities that we are going to visit, actually, they focus mostly on the production of cheese and dry meat products, and you're going to see the secrets how they produce all these type of food products. Okay. And here, well, you're going to have a little bit of extra time. And you can just, well, aside of the Romana tour that we are planning, you are going to be able to visit the cathedral, that it's very nice. It's this one, is the one that you have here. And also, I think the amphitheater is going to be included in the visit because it's very interesting. And also we have the Rambla Nova that is quite similar to the Ramblas that we have in Barcelona. And there are different, well, different cafeterias, bar, and different type of stores that you can just visit. And one thing that I was missing is like we are also going to go to this university. In this university, well, we have different type of degrees. Mostly we are going to visit what is called the scientific campus, okay? And we are going to explain you the secrets of using insects, okay? Because I don't know if you are aware, but insects are a hot topic in Europe as a source of proteins and lipids for humans and also to feed our livestock. And actually, this is a new source of proteins that you need to be aware because they are going to be enriched in some of the food products that you're going to be eating in the near future, okay? Then we are going to move to Girona. Girona is one of the cities located quite close to France in the north part of Catalonia. And here we are planning a short visit, but we are going to be doing a lot of things just for 2 days. And actually we are planning to visit IRTA. IRTA is actually one of the research institutes more important that they do a lot of research in meat products, okay? And we are also planning to visit the experimental farm. And they have very novel technologies just to treat food products. I don't know if you heard, but there is one technology that we use instead of applying heat treatment that it's high pressure, and they have very nice machines, but that they are very expensive, and they are going to show us how they use it just to reduce the presence of one pathogen. I don't know if you heard about problems of outbreaks of Listeria monocytogenes. This one is very dangerous for, well, pregnant women, for kids and people with problems in the immune system. And this technology is the only one that reduces the presence of this pathogen in this type of food products, okay? And then you are going to have a little bit of time to visit Girona, that it's very nice. It has a river that crosses the city, and also it has a medieval neighborhood that it's very worthy to visit, okay? And then we are just going to move to Barcelona. I know that you really want to go to Barcelona. I don't know if you want to go to Gaudí buildings or maybe to Parkway or all these places that you are going to have time, but we are planning to be there just 3 days, okay? And the returning flight is going to be from Barcelona. And the main idea that we have is to visit this university that is located 40 minutes far away from Barcelona, but it's the only one that actually has a campus like here, the one that you enjoy here at the Ohio State University. And the idea is just to visit the pilot plant facilities and actually make a real cheese and a real dry meat product, okay, and analyze it in the lab facilities that they have in the Food Science and Technology department, okay? And you're going to see how lucky you are because if you have the chance to compare the pilot plant facilities, maybe, I don't know if you have access or not, that we have here on campus and the ones that we have there, you're going to see the difference, okay? We are also planning just to meet the students that actually are studying veterinary and food science and technology there, because in May, the spring semester is not over in Spain. And I think it's going to be a good opportunity for you just to interact with undergraduate students, okay? And then we are planning just to have a farewell dinner and we are going to have free time mostly in the afternoons just to enjoy the city, to enjoy Barcelona.
Awesome. Thank you. So talking a little bit about costs, because I know it's always on everyone's mind. So because this is a summer program, you will have to pay the 3 credits for the tuition, which will get applied to your summer 2026 bursar bill. So that will be according to your regular residency. So if you're in state or out of state, you'll get 3 credit hours of tuition assessed to your bursar bill. In addition to that, there are 2 other items that are applied to the bursar bill for summer 2026. The first is the study abroad program fee. And so we just got that published here, I think last week. And so the program fee for summer 2026 is $4,491. That includes all of your lodging and your accommodations throughout the trip. It includes some meals. So pretty much all of the breakfasts and lunch are included throughout the program, except the day that we arrive in Seville. There's no breakfast or lunch that day, but from the next day forward, I think all the breakfast and lunch are included. And then there's 3 additional dinners throughout the trip. All of your program required transportation, so getting to all of the visits, getting between the cities, all of that is included. All of the activities and excursions that are kind of the official part of the program. The free time activity ideas are not, but like everything else, all of the company visits and farm visits, all the activities at the universities, that's all included. And then everyone gets enrolled in an international accident and sickness insurance. So if anything comes up, you get a sore throat, you twist your ankle, and you need to see a doctor, that's covered, and we can help you make those arrangements. So the tuition, the program fee, and the third item that gets billed to your bursar bill for summer 2026 is a $50 administrative fee for the Office of International Affairs. So those 3 items will be applied to your summer bursar bill, due on the same time frame as any of the summer bills are due. And then there's one other fee to be aware of. There is a $150 application fee. So if you decide to apply, when you go to submit your application, you'll make that payment with a debit or a credit card. So then there are other things that you realistically have to budget for that are not included, right? So like your airfare, you have to get to Spain, those dinners, your passport expenses, things like that. So on the financial tab of the program web flyer, there is a cost sheet that includes kind of those things that are billed to you through the university and some estimates of out-of-pocket expenses. And so this is kind of a screenshot of that cost sheet. The items here on the right, that's the numbers that we use on the cost sheet. We do budget high on the cost sheet. We do that intentionally for the sake of, if you were to use the cost sheet, like if you have to submit a budget for a scholarship application, or if you need to do a cost of attendance appeal with the university to increase your cost of attendance so that you have additional room to stack additional study abroad specific scholarships, that we're giving an estimate that we think will definitely include all of the costs that you're going to have, and that we're not shortchanging you in any way, right? We would rather give you a higher estimate and have you spend less than underestimate what you might spend. However, I did want to kind of provide a range with some of what might be a little bit lower, more reasonable cost, right? So, I looked up airfare a couple weeks ago when I put these slides together, and particularly if you're willing to pay for a basic economy ticket instead of a regular economy ticket, which usually means you don't get to pick your seat, you just get assigned a seat when you check in. there were tickets out there with reasonable layovers for, closer to $1,000. There's no room listed here because all of your hotel accommodations are included, board, so those meals that are not included. We kind of use a percentage of the federal per diem rate, which is really thinking about how much meals would cost if you're eating meals at restaurants every night and maybe having nicer meals. If you're willing to just go get a sandwich or go get, groceries and make yourself some things or make yourself some snacks, you can get away with spending less on that. The number we use here for books and supplies is actually a number given to us by financial aid. We kind of talked about this before, but there are no books required for the course, so you might not spend anything. Maybe you get a notebook, spend $10, but maybe you have a notebook and then you don't actually have to purchase anything there. Same thing with kind of the immunizations and the international travel consultation. That's specifically referring to if you want to have a travel consultation with a medical professional to talk about traveling and any vaccines or medications you might want. You don't need any vaccines to get into Spain. So it's quite possible that you would spend nothing on this, or if you go visit your primary care physician for just a regular office visit, that might be a little bit less. The personal expenses here for the global education personal expense, that's really an estimate for how much it might be to get international cell phone privileges. A lot of companies have like a daily pass that's usually $10 to $12 a day. So that's kind of that high end there at 144. There are also a lot of new companies that are doing like eSIM cards that you can get that will give you an international data plan for whatever country you're in. And those can be a lot less expensive. You might not have the full capabilities of your phone, but you'd be able to like call somebody using like a WhatsApp, like doing a Wi-Fi call, and keep up with any like messaging on, iMessage or Google Message if you've got connected to the internet. So it kind of gives you that internet capability with your phone, no matter where you are. The one thing we don't really budget for, so why I kind of included a little bit of money in this personal expenses line, was because we don't really have anything there for personal expenses. If you're going to, want to go visit a museum and there's a $10 charge to get in. If you forget your toothpaste and you need to buy it, you want to get souvenirs for your family. So I did add a little bit of money there for that type of an expense. And then again, like your passport, if you already have a passport, you don't need to buy another one. So you're good there. So you might not have to spend anything. Now your passport does need to be valid for at least 6 months past the end date of the program. So 6 months from May 22nd, it should still be a valid passport. If it's going to expire before then you should renew it before you travel. So there will be some money to renew that passport, but it's usually less than getting a new passport. And then US citizens do not need any type of pre-authorized visa or travel entry. So nothing there. Now, if you're an international student, there might be some expense there, and you can reach out and we can talk about that more. But so kind of the out-of-pocket estimate can really range from maybe $1,300 to $2,400, which is what is on the cost sheet. So that kind of brings down the kind of all-in range from 7,233 to 8,349, and that could still go up or down a little bit depending on your own personal spending habits. But I wanted to give you a better picture of what some of that cost might really look like. So moving on to scholarships. So a couple things to be aware of. One, you can use federal financial aid towards the cost of a study abroad program, as well as some university scholarships. Now, the trick with summer is that you still have to be meeting the conditions of the aid or the scholarship. So for like federal loans, for example, you have to be taking at least 6 credits to be eligible in the summer for federal loans. So there's still some pieces to that maybe not all of your aid is going to be available in the summer, or if you take it in the summer, they might have ramifications for how much aid you have left throughout the rest of the school year or the rest of your career at Ohio State. You can go to Buckeye Link and ask them to help you get a sense of what aid might be available to you in the summer if you are going to enroll in a 3 credit hour study abroad course. Then you could tell them, I'm planning to enroll in Animal Sciences 3797.08 for 3 credits in the summer. Can you help me understand what portions of my financial aid package may or may not be available to me and what that would look like? And so they can kind of help give you that estimate. There are also a variety of scholarships available. So For anybody on the call that is a CFAES major, we do have scholarships from within the college that are available to any of our students that would be participating on this program. We are transitioning to a new scholarship application that will be available in Scholarship Universe. It's supposed to go live on December 1st. So be looking for that, or let me know if you're having trouble accessing it. The deadline to submit that scholarship application will be January 16th. And everybody that wants to be considered for our study abroad scholarships will need to submit that application. So it's kind of an additional app to what you might have done earlier this year, like just that one general kind of e-form application that we've had in the past. And just to give you a sense of kind of what the likelihood of getting an award from the college is, 92% of eligible students are awarded some type of funding from the college. So our award rate is pretty high. And our awards typically range from $1,000 to $2,500, which are with most of our summer students getting somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000. So gives you a sense too of how much you might anticipate getting. Other things to be considering if you're part of the STEP program, your STEP funds are eligible to be used towards this program, so you can apply your STEP funding. Everybody at Ohio State is eligible to apply for scholarships through the Office of International Affairs, so kind of the Central Global Education Office here on campus. They have scholarship funding for study abroad as well. They also have an application in Scholarship Universe. Their application is scheduled to open, I believe, around January 13th, like mid-January, right when classes start again, and then it's going to be due about a month later. So you'll want to look for that. They'll send emails out to students once that's open and once students have kind of opened an application to study abroad for the summer. I would also encourage you to think about other units that you're affiliated with. So if you're not a student here in CFAES, talking to people in your college, I know like Arts and Sciences has study abroad funding. I think engineering and Fisher do as well. So talking to, your academic advisor or somebody in your home college about what type of opportunity might be available through them. If you're part of Honors and Scholars, they have academic enrichment grants. The university, also the undergraduate student government has academic enrichment grants. So there are some other opportunities on campus for funding. And then there's also some national scholarship programs. So if you get a Pell Grant as part of your financial aid package, you'd be eligible for the Gilman Scholarship. Or there's a subset of Gilman that is specifically for children and spousal dependents of active duty military members. So if you identify with either of those groups, please reach out and I can talk to you more about those scholarships. They tend to be due in March. And so a variety of different opportunities, and you can get awards from multiple sources and kind of stack them up together. One thing to note about scholarships is that the timeline is not great. So our college scholarship notifications, we are able to get those decisions out before students have to kind of make that decision on whether or not they're going to commit to the program if they've been accepted. But a lot of these other scholarships, you're not going to hear back from until probably, maybe March or later, depending on the scholarship and the application timeline. So you should be thinking about not only, what scholarships that you want to apply for and that you're going to be eligible for and the timeline for that, but what is your backup plan? How would you pay for the program if you don't get any or all of that scholarship funding? Are there, maybe private loans or savings that you have available to you that you could tap into to pay for this? Working a job and paying back family members, what does that look like for you? So you kind of have that plan in place for, this is the funding I hope to get to pay for the program. And if I don't, this is what I intend to do. And I'm happy to talk through that more with anybody on an individual basis if you have questions or want to just kind of work through that. In terms of the kind of eligibility requirements in the application process, so to be eligible for the program, you do have to be an enrolled degree-seeking student here at Ohio State. You need to have a minimum cumulative GPA of a 2.5. There is also a course prerequisite, so you have to have completed Animal Science 3110 or Food Science 2400 prior to traveling with the program. So if you haven't already taken those classes or if you're not taking them now, you can enroll in them in spring of 2026 to still be eligible to apply for the program. And we are looking for you to complete those classes with a grade of B or higher. The last eligibility piece is you have to meet OIA's general eligibility requirements and conditions for participation, which you can kind of access online. But really what that's saying is you need to be in good disciplinary standing with the university. Students cannot be on cannot be on disciplinary probation during the travel dates of their program. And that is also kind of saying that you're agreeing to fulfill the requirements that we ask of you for this trip. So if you're accepted and we're asking you for your passport information, or to complete other forms, that you are going to do those in a timely manner and respond to us when we follow up with you about questions or missing documentation. If you are interested in applying, you can apply through the Global Education website, which is just globaleducation.osu.edu. You'll go specifically to the Process Meats and Cheese program, which that second link will take you directly there. You scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, you'll see an Apply Now button, and you just click on that, and that will open up the application for you. The application is pretty straightforward. It's mostly documents to kind of read and sign, saying that you've read and agreed to whatever is in that document. There are a couple items that take a little bit more time. One being you have to download a copy of your advising report off of Buckeye Link and upload that to your application. There's also an applicant questionnaire that has some like really basic personal information, and then about 4 or 5 short answer questions. So things like, why are you interested in this program? How is this program going to help you meet your, academic or professional goals? How are you going to be a good representative of Ohio State abroad? And I would say those are really the questions that is being reviewed as part of your application. And that's your chance to tell us and kind of the review committee a little bit more about you and why you're interested in this program. And so you certainly don't have to write a full novel, but you do want to give us a nice solid paragraph that really gives us a good response to that question. One sentence is maybe not enough. So like I said, kind of a nice solid paragraph. And then that last step is usually paying that $150 application fee. The application is due Thursday, January 15th. You have all day on the 15th to work on the application. It's due at like 11:59 p.m. Do keep in mind, though, standard office hours end at usually about 5 p.m. on the weekdays. So if you are working on it and kind of finishing up late at night, real close to that deadline, and you run into a technical problem, don't panic. Just send me an email, let me know what's going on. And then when I come in Friday morning, I will be in touch with you and we'll work through it. And then kind of the last little pieces, next steps. If you are interested, I recommend, talking this through with your support system, your friends, your family. Your academic advisor is a great person to discuss this with. They can help you understand how the course may or may not be fulfilling a degree requirement for you. Make sure you apply both to the program and to scholarships. So be, kind of researching what are those scholarships that you're eligible for and what's the timeline to apply for those. If you don't already have a passport, go ahead and apply. Passport is good for 10 years, assuming that you are all over the age of 16. So even if this doesn't end up being the time that you apply to study abroad or you travel internationally, you'll have your passport. And then that will never be a reason why you can't study abroad. And then ask us questions. So I've got all of our emails up there. I've got Dr. Bohr's email since he wasn't able to join us today. You can also schedule an appointment with me through OnCourse. And that is that. So with that, are there any questions? You can put them in the chat. You can also just type or come off mute and ask as well. And I'll go ahead and stop the recording.